We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica Madsen. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Koali. And joining us today, we also have Sarah Crane, who is a Product Manager. So welcome. We know that you're very busy. We know now is a crazy time, and we are really glad that you came. First of all, I'm going to give you an intro into who we are as Koali, and then we'll go through the five main essential features of a workflow process. And then we'll do a quick demo showing some of those features in action and discuss some of the benefits they can bring to institutions. And then we'll also have some time for questions. So if you have questions, be sure to use the question feature. So we're Koali. We are amazing software built for higher education. We've been in higher education for 16 years, and we focus really on being a partner rather than just a product vendor. Our community of institutions is extremely important to us. They're why we exist, and we're focused on bringing delightful experiences for them. We work with over 200 institutions, both big and small, public and private, and we are constantly growing. We were born out of collaborative efforts in higher education back in 2004, working with a group of institutions to create software that would disrupt the market and really change the way that ed tech was moving. In 2014, we became a company focused on sustainable modular solutions built for and hosted in the cloud. Our portfolio of products includes curriculum and catalog, Build, which is no-code apps, Research for compliance and sponsored programs, Financials, and Ready, that is business continuity planning software. Today, we're going to be focused on the curriculum and catalog portion, and specifically on the workflow software within. So institutions have been adapting for years, and now with COVID, you are preparing for face-to-face and in-person. There's constant pivots, and you've already been preparing for moving to a more remote and asynchronous environment, and you're still trying to provide that exceptional experience for your students and for your faculty. And that is where workflow can come in. You're asked to do more with less, and so things are moving more and more remote. This is able to be hosted in the cloud, and you're already focusing on curriculum requirements, accreditation, catalog requirements, registration, and now pivoting everything else. And so workflow, and especially an automated workflow that can be accessed from anywhere, can really help you elevate those processes so that you aren't chasing things through the process and you're focused on other things. And this is really where things have been moving for a while. And no matter where you are in the process, it's nice to know what is available. So the five essential workflow features that we're going to talk about today, our product team has done essential research with our partners, figuring out where we can provide the most value and what features can really provide the most benefit to institutions. So first, we're going to talk about a graphical drag and drop interface, meaning that it's easy to visualize, you have icons and color coding, it's easy for people from all levels of tech backgrounds to use, and it's easily understood. Branching for unique scenarios, so you can maintain all of your unique scenarios within one workflow and have different branches based on the requirements of different processes, different departments, etc. Role-based routing, meaning that the routing of a process in a document or in a course or proposal, etc., through a process is personnel agnostic. It's tied to the title of the department, which can then be seamlessly upgraded through API integrations, and the workflow is not affected depending on what's happening in as far as personnel changes or people taking over new responsibilities. You also want something that is going to encourage action, so automatic notifications that are triggered for the next step, a easy to understand and easy to view dashboard for both admins and end users. Something where you don't have to encourage that action, the software does it for you. And finally, it's something that is built exclusively for higher ed. So you aren't trying to make an enterprise system work for you. You're working with a company that understands who you are and what you need and what the unique mission and development cycles of higher ed entail. And so with all of that, I'm going to turn the time over to Sarah, who will show us how those features work in action and the type of benefits that institutions can see.
Thank you, Jessica. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into our workflow engine. Running through those benefits that Jessica mentioned, the first one that we want to talk to you today about is the graphical drag and drop design of our workflow engine. And that's what you're looking at here on my screen. This is our curriculum management software, and within it, the location in the application where you would be configuring and viewing any of the workflows associated with the content within the system. Now, why does a graphical drag and drop design for workflow matter? Well, if you've seen what workflow engines across the market or in different applications in certain enterprise tools, not necessarily specific to curriculum management, you've likely seen very different experiences presented for managing a workflow process. Many of those that I've seen involve very lengthy lists of what we call steps. Now, this doesn't lend itself all that well to those of us who want to have a more holistic view into what's happening to proposals as they're moving through the governance process on our campus. Oftentimes there's changeover in roles at an institution. There's a certain amount of education that needs to be done each time you do a curricular approval cycle. And having a display of your workflow, of that governance process that's displayed in a visual graphical fashion, drastically decreases that learning curve as you are both working to understand how your institution has been managing that governance process and then any changes you might want to make to that. Managing lists or managing multiple workflows for various scenarios can really make that process quite difficult. And one of our chief aims at Koali is to make sure that you can efficiently use our tools so that you can spend your time focusing on the curriculum itself rather than the process that feeds into that governance process behind the scenes. So looking at our workflow engine, I just want to point out a few things to you. You'll be able to see here, I'm looking at a course workflow. So for this particular institution, this is the governance process that courses will go through as they are moved through the governance cycle. Now you can see here we have very easy to use navigation, as Jessica mentioned, with the ability for you to drag and drop what we call steps within the workflow, any which location that you'd like them to be. What this means is that this doesn't require a high degree of technical aptitude from you as a system administrator or for anyone who happens to be charged with the responsibility of configuring and maintaining the workflows for your curriculum and other elements on campus. You don't need to involve IT. You don't need to spend a lot of time training. You can easily use our drag and drop interface to add additional steps to your workflow, such as approvals, acknowledgements, notifications, etc., in a way that means your learning curve is much less significant as well. What we find is that adoption of a new tool on a campus is often the most difficult part of procuring new software that's designed to solve problems that you're experiencing. So our focus on the user experience, especially within workflow, to allow you to easily drag and drop additional steps into your process, use intuitive tools that help you determine where those processes should go in terms of roles or branches, really helps maintain the ease of use for the tool and increases the adoption, which again, of course, then results in you having a better experience that helps improve your campus's processes in general. If you're looking at a workflow engine that's requiring you to create multiple workflows for more than one scenario, say, for example, a workflow for new courses or a workflow for modified courses, etc., you're really not leveraging what you could be leveraging with what Koali Curriculum Management can offer you, which is one tool that allows you to have an easy to use interface along with the flexibility that you need to lower that cost of maintenance for you on your campus. Now, the second element of a best-in-class workflow engine, as Jessica mentioned, is branches for unique scenarios. And I touched on this just now, but I want to get into a little bit more detail about that. Oftentimes, as you're looking for a curriculum management tool, you may notice that the options available require a lot of different workflow configurations based off of the scenario that your proposal may encounter as it goes through the governance process. So what I've done here is I've set up a fairly simple example of one of those branching, as we call them, scenarios. Now, what you're seeing here is the first step is a course form is submitted. And what I've done is I've created a branch. And what this branch does is this allows me to determine, I can click here and I can see the configuration panel appear here on the right-hand side, determine based off of data on the form or data that is inherited behind the scenes from the form that the system knows about, to determine a unique path, a unique governance process based off of the scenario presented within the proposal or the data included therein. So in this example, what I've done, we have a field on our course form, we have data associated with our course form that's related to the proposal type. So what I've done is set up 3 different branches associated with courses, 3 different scenarios that are going to happen to any proposal that moves through the governance process. One of them is that the proposal type is to create. So if it's a brand new course, there's a specific set of steps or approvals, acknowledgements, etc., that need to happen in order for that proposal to go through to final approval and be approved to be offered on my campus. The other scenario is that it is not a new course, it is a modified course, and that has a different set of steps required or a slightly different governance process associated with any changes to existing curriculum. The last scenario is that the course itself is proposed to be being retired. So we are having a proposal created to no longer offer a course on campus. Each of these, as you can see, has slightly different variations on what should happen in the process given these specific criteria. Now, in other tools you may see, this would require you to create an entirely new workflow to maintain and to train you and your users on in order to satisfy these 3 criteria. In Koali Curriculum Management, however, we have one workflow engine that has a level of flexibility that allows you to satisfy all of these scenarios in one easy to use and easy to maintain feature. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the steps that can be included within the workflow so you can get a sense of how these processes can vary between these different scenarios and how you might use the steps that we provide to support that. So for example, one of the most common, of course, steps in a governance process is an approval. So an approval, of course, requires that one or more individuals within your system approve a proposal to be offered on campus. So you can insert an approval into any step into your workflow. And what this will do is this will automatically create an action request for the people. It can be one or more, it can be as many as you need, a committee, for example. to participate in the approval of that proposal. It will automatically send them a notification, and as I'll show you a little bit later, there are other areas within the application as well that they can access to take quick action on the approvals that are requested of them. Another option that you can include is an acknowledgement. Now, an acknowledgement is designed to be used to support a scenario where you have a particular person or persons who need to be made aware of a proposal. So in this circumstance, the department committee needs to be made aware that a new course is being created, but that committee is not required to participate in the actual approval of that course. In that case, an acknowledgement step is used to send this proposal to the department committee. It allows them to interact with the proposal, view what is being proposed in the creation of this new curriculum, as well as to provide any comments on that proposal so that they can ask any questions or provide any feedback as part of that governance process. It won't, however, prohibit the proposal from moving forward through to final approval. So this is something that you would use in a scenario where you want someone to know that the proposal is moving through the process, but it isn't critical that they participate from a governance perspective. Another very critical step that you can include in the workflow process is a notification. Now, notifications will automatically be sent to those of your users who are requesting or are being requested to take action on a proposal, say to approve or to acknowledge. But the notification step can also enable you to provide just-in-time updates relevant to that particular proposal for any user or users that you would like within curriculum management. This level of flexibility allows you to communicate on a responsive basis to encourage those who need to be made aware of the changes that are happening within your curriculum to participate in the process. Again, not necessarily requiring that they vote or that they approve, but that they're always kept in the loop about what is happening as a course, a program, etc., is moving through the governance process. These notification steps are fully configurable. You can add in specific subject lines. Say, for example, in this circumstance, I wanted to send a proposal a notification to the proposer to let him or her know that their proposal has moved through this first series of approvals within the process. I can do so. I can include information from the proposal itself, including the subject code, title, etc. Simply by typing here in the email body, I can enter in, similar to what you would see in a mail merge situation or any kind of form fill type of functionality. I can add specific variables from the proposal to the email, and those will automatically be added in to the email notification and contextualized for that approver. So I can say, hi, your proposal for number coming from the form, and then the abbreviated course title has been approved. This allows me to include any who need to be participants in the process to be notified. It could be the proposer, it could be the department chair. You really have a lot of flexibility to include whomever you'd like in the process as part of the governance cycle. But as you'll see here, that specific functionality of including branches for unique scenarios allows me to determine as an administrator that it's only in this circumstance that I want the proposer to receive a notification at this point. Not if it's a modified proposal and not if it's a proposal to retire, but specifically only if the proposal is being created. This level of flexibility exists at all aspects of our workflow configuration engine. So you're able to highly contextualize both the approval steps, the acknowledge steps, but also the specific notifications and the text that accompanies them that goes out dependent on your, I'm sure, very varied and broad use cases across your campus. We see this as being particularly important, especially at institutions that have a highly decentralized or a very unique set of circumstances for how different departments or colleges handle their approval processes. Typically, when you're coming from a scenario where you don't have a system that you're already using, or you have a homegrown system such as, managing something that your IT team has built for you and been maintaining for you, or PDF, email, and Google Docs, etc. There's a lot of disparate processes that can tend to crop up over time. And part of the adoption of a new tool is, of course, a little bit of trying to bring some of that back together, mixed with a diplomatic amount of continuing to let different areas of your institution act autonomously as needed. And in our tool, because of the flexibility that we provide with this branching, you can accommodate both. You can streamline processes all the while that you're also helping to ease some of that transition for those of your departments or colleges that need to have a specific process of their own. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about that Jessica mentioned, as far as the value of a best-in-class workflow engine, is role-based routing. And you've probably seen some of that already as I've been talking through the different steps possible in a workflow configuration, but I want to dive into that a little bit more. If I click here on this approval step, let's say the proposal is a modification of a course. Here at the top in the right-hand configuration panel, you're able to see the different options we can provide for who this approval is sent to. There's a lot of flexibility in here. You can choose data from the form to drive who the proposal is sent to. You can choose a specific individual if you'd like to choose to have the proposal be sent to. But the most common and the one we recommend is to have this proposal and all of the steps included within of your workflow be sent to a specific role. You probably have heard a lot or are very familiar with role-based permissions. Those are permissions, things users can do within the system based off of the role that they've been assigned. And this is a very similar, if basically the same concept, where rather than having to use a workflow engine or your homegrown process that requires you to know the specific individuals that need to have a particular proposal sent to them, you use the roles that you've developed within our system as part of implementation to always send the proposal to the correct person based off of the appropriate role that should receive the approval or the notification or the acknowledgement. So in this circumstance here, we've chosen to use a field on our course form. In this case, it's the department field. And then what the system is doing is it already knows all of the roles associated with your department because of the work that you've done with us during implementation to set up the structure of your institution. So rather than having to know a specific individual associated with each department and who that chair is, you simply need to just select department chair. And what the workflow engine will do is it will, from the data entered onto the form, say it's the English department, it already knows who the English department chair is and will route the proposal accordingly. You'll notice here there's nothing here that says anything about an English chair. And that's because you don't need to get into that level of specificity for the workflow engine to know who the proposal needs to go to for approval. This eliminates a lot of time and manual work on your part, trying to keep up with who the appropriate people are to include in the process. You can have a generalized configuration like you see here and still know that the data being entered into the form or the data that we already are deriving from the form will mean that the proposal will go to the appropriate place. This is true also for more than just an individual. So you can, as you see here, can send it to a committee. It doesn't have to be just one person. And then you can also determine how those individuals, whether it's one or many, need to respond in an approval. So you can say, I really only need one person to provide a response to this, or I need to have a percentage of users respond. So in a committee situation, again, you're using the role associated with, say, a department committee, and you don't need to know who each of those individuals are. You don't even need to know how many individuals there are on that committee. All you need to know and determine in your workflow configuration is how many need to respond in order for that proposal to be considered approved and move forward in the process. So utilizing this role-based routing allows you to take a very generalized and holistic view of your governance process and really doesn't require you to get into the nitty-gritty of paper shuffling or sending emails or checking in with specific individuals, or, as we often see is the case, having to spend every new curriculum cycle at least some portion of time getting up to speed on changes that have happened across your campus to make sure that you're sending the proposals to the right place or the right people. The system is going to automatically do that for you as you're updating in one place who should be associated with a particular role. It's going to filter down throughout the whole application, and most importantly through workflow, so that you don't have to manage that in multiple places. Now, the fourth element that we want to talk about that's important in a workflow engine is that the engine encourages action. Now, this is really critical because, as we know, and most of the time, as Jessica mentioned, we are very community focused at Koali. So a large percentage of my time is spent talking with our customers and really understanding and trying to understand the context that they operate in and what it's like to be at the center of a curriculum approval process and really need to manage all of that. And one of the things that I hear over and over and over again, and this is especially pertinent, as Jessica mentioned, as we've seen these huge shifts in the way we're all having to work now that most of what we once were doing in offices next to each other or even on the same campus is shifting to asynchronous and remote process. And the problem that I hear most frequently is things take so long. It takes a really long time for me, even when I'm on campus with all of the same people that I need to be. It takes a long time to move all of our proposals through our governance process in every curriculum cycle. So what you really need when you're looking for a workflow engine to support this process is something that takes as much of the manual work out of that as you possibly can. Always there's going to be, I'm sure, someone you're going to need to individually email. I hear that frequently. But something that will take away that need for the manual work on your part, and something that will provide transparency to those who need to take action to move your proposals through and to complete that curriculum cycle. Now, we handle this in a couple of ways, and I've already talked a little bit about that through our notification steps, and then a bit in our description of what happens when an approval is requested. And I want to show you what that looks like. So if I come here, this is our dashboard in curriculum management. And as Jessica mentioned, this dashboard is targeted both toward our faculty, staff, those who would particularly or typically participate in the curriculum approval process. So those who are creating their proposals, monitoring what's happening as it's moving through the process, and ultimately just wanting to know what happens either way. Is my proposal approved? Is it not? Are there things I need to do, etc.? But then also those who need to take action. So your approvers, your deans, your department chairs, etc., who need to have that visibility into what's being asked of them and the status of the things that they have participated in. So our workflow engine, the way that it's designed, hooks within to this dashboard to provide that level of transparency. So in addition to the notifications that are being sent out requesting approval, that are updating any particular user or users as part of the governance process, you have this dashboard here as well. It's the first thing that your users are going to see when they log into the application. And what it's going to do is it's going to give that level of transparency that allows them to see immediately what they need to do. For example, I see here that I have created this inorganic chemistry proposal and it's been sent back to me. That means I need to take an action on this proposal, and I see that immediately as I come into the tool. What I also see here on the right-hand side is my action list. So these are all of the proposals that are waiting for me to do something. I come into the application, and again, it's the first thing that I see. Why does this matter? As we're talking about, getting these proposals through the governance process is so much a part of that battle. Just really wanting to make sure that you're keeping to your institution's timeline so that you can meet your catalog publication cycle timelines is really critical. And providing this type of information, both in the form of notifications and then also in form of the dashboard as users first log into the system, really helps grease those wheels and helps provide your users a lot of opportunity to be informed about what is expected of them in the process. Now, additionally, for you, if you are an administrator who's overseeing this process, who's used to making a lot of phone calls or used to sending a lot of emails, there's a really natural question that comes up, which is, how do I know where things are in the process? How do I know who I need to talk to or where I need to find out how I can help ease some of those bottlenecks? Now, our curriculum management reports engine is a very powerful way to provide insight into this process. Now, in addition to providing you with all of the data that you need to report across your courses, your programs, etc., all of the things you might be interested in, we also have this element that allows you to run reports to view the process itself. So how long has a proposal been at its particular step in workflow? And what is that step? What you want to do, of course, is to remain aware of what's happening in the process and also be empowered to reach out to those who might need a little bit more encouragement than others, or who may need some training. Perhaps they aren't certain how to come in. They don't like emails. They're not used to reading those in this type of context, etc. This tool allows you to run reports either on all of the curriculum that's moving through your governance process, or you can use our advanced filtering or our groups filtering to narrow down that data so that you can get either a very high level bird's eye view into how long proposals have been in the workflow cycle, and then where you might need to intervene, or all the way down to a specific department. If you know there's a specific department that you work with that often needs a little bit more encouragement, or there's someone new in that role and you're looking to be helpful to provide them with information on potentially what might be slowing things down, you can use our reports tool to generate that information. So I can see here that there's a lot of proposals that have been at a particular step for a long time. Now, these numbers might seem a little high to you, but I can tell you, I was just recently looking at some data across several of our institutions, and looking at how long proposals were at their particular workflow step. And I saw very, very many where we're talking over 100 days at a particular step. Now, and that might be fine. There are, different timelines and cycles for different elements of your governance process. But if you have the data and you have easy access to it, like you do with Kuali Curriculum Management, then that means that you can be proactive rather than reactive. And you know when it's okay that a proposal's been at a certain step, and then you also know when it's not, and you can take action on that. The other area that it helps to provide transparency to encourage action is within a proposal itself. So what I'm looking at here, this is the view of a proposal, Principles of Chemistry, that has been submitted to our workflow for approval. What I'm looking at on this panel is the workflow status. So I, as a proposer, or I, as an approver, can have easy access within the proposal, within reports, within the dashboard, within the notifications that I receive, about what's happening with this proposal. And oftentimes what we find is really just knowing where something is at, where it needs to go, really helps improve that process and decrease the timeline associated with your governance cycle. So as I come to this proposal, I can see I'm waiting currently for the chemistry chair to approve. And if I expand, then I'm also able to see where that proposal has been previously, who has approved it, any comments they've made, etc. And then what is left to be done. So any additional approvals that are going to be requested when the time comes, any notifications that are going to be sent out, etc. So again, just having a high level of transparency for this information associated with the process, along with all of the automated steps that you're creating when you're configuring the workflow, including those notifications, really helps encourage those of your colleagues and your users of Kuali Curriculum Management to fully participate in the process, and encourage that action that leads to a timely wrap up of your governance cycle. And if you are in a particular situation where you don't have cycles, this is a year-long process, it facilitates the same type of thing where you're decreasing the amount of time needed to be spent on any specific proposal to move it through, to ultimately increase the speed with which you can respond to developing curriculum needs, changing curriculum needs on your campus, especially, as Jessica mentioned, in this fairly uncertain time that we're in now. Now, the last thing that I want to touch on is that fifth element of a best-in-class workflow engine, and that is that it should be built for higher ed. Now, I mentioned earlier, most of my time is spent with our clients. Now, I find that this is a very, very critical part of the success that we have at Kuali working within higher education. There's a lot of unique challenges in every industry, of course. There's a lot to know about how industries work. But higher education has a lot of its own challenges, and especially in these, as we've mentioned, uncertain times, there's a lot of unknown. So if you're looking for an application to solve your curriculum management needs, it really should be one that is provided by a vendor that understands the context that you're operating in. And that's what we do at Kuali. We spend many, many hours each week, each day, sometimes, working with our customers to really understand how we can solve the unique problems that they're facing on their campuses, and how we can leverage all of those conversations that we're having with all of the different institutions that we work with. You saw the slide that Jessica showed that showed just the sheer number of institutions that we talk to on a regular basis. We really want to provide solutions that are unique to the problems that you all are facing. And this is especially critical as we see the shifts that are happening in higher education and as I mentioned, a lot of the unknown. This requires you to really work with a vendor who can be as agile as you need to be, uh, and focused on your specific needs, because there's a lot that the industry itself doesn't necessarily know about how the future will take shape. Well, what we do at Koali is we work with you lockstep, and we also have a lot of experience and know-how of our own, as we've worked with all of these different institutions to see what works and what doesn't, that we bring to the table, both in our development of our software, everything down to very simple things like what a particular action should be called. Is it okay within your institution to call this an approval? Does it need to be called something else? These are the types of conversations that, because we are building specifically for higher ed, we can have with you, and we can work out ways for us to meet your institution's unique needs, because our attention and our time isn't split across varying industries with oftentimes varying, very different expectations for how an application will function. And then also different expectations from those who are using the application in order to encourage adoption, which of course is really critical as you are taking the time to investigate, procure, learn, train, implement a new tool, and supporting your curriculum governance process on campus. So our focus on higher ed allows us to have that really dedicated, lasered in approach to how we can solve your unique problems in a way that allows us to maintain that agility and that flexibility to accommodate your needs, as well as the needs of all of our partners of varying sizes, community colleges, universities, large and small. Our focus allows us to provide the best solution that we possibly can for you, because our focus is on you. Well, that's all I have as far as our demonstration is concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time back over to Jessica.
Thank you. I am just going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Please, if you have any questions, connect with us at your convenience at koali.co or experience@koali.co. No matter what stage of the cycle you are in with your curriculum management, we're happy to answer any questions and talk to you. And so please just get in touch with us. And last, thank you very much for coming.